All right, well, we might as well get going. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to another one of our webinars. Feels like we haven't done one of these for a while, but it's great to be with you, and it's great to be doing this webinar, our usual exciting webinar for the end of the year for TIA Portal version 21. Now, we're here in Brew Lab, and I'm joined by Adrian from Siemens, who is actually sitting right next to me, but you can't see him. There you go. So yeah, let's get going. If you haven't been to a Brew Lab, it's our in-house brewery. It is a functional brewery. Yes, if you haven't heard of it before, I know you're jealous, but we can do something about that. If you've got time, drop in for a drink, or two, or three. Right, so it's this time of the year. 'Tis the season for TIA Portal releases. If you've been following for a while, what they tend to do these days is pretty much release a new version every November in the SPS show, and it pretty much becomes available for delivery and purchase in usually early December, and it's great because we start talking about it close to Christmas, and that's awesome because I know that you're just dying to spend your Christmas break installing Siemens software. So let's get going. So there's quite a few slides to cover, and we're not going to quite cover everything, but we will have some more sessions. So today we'll be focused on the PLC, the PLC part of it, step 7, the Startdrive for the drives, and also some other random features and hardware, new hardware releases. And next year we'll run a series of webinars to cover the SCADA and HMI part, because there's quite a bit of work that was done in WinCC Unified. So we'll probably give it its own webinar. And really, I don't want to put you through 300 slides. not that close to Christmas anyway. Right. So let's have a look. Entire screen. Okay. Okay. So let's get into the presentation. So if you have any questions, I'm going to try to keep an eye. Actually, Adrian, can you log in as well and just have a look at the questions? If not, I'll just try to have a look at the questions every now and then and see what's going on. Right. Okay. So TIA Portal 21. There's quite a few features. Today we're going to focus on the step 7 part. And Startdrive and the hardware and some system functions. We'll see how we go for time. We might have to go shorter or longer depending on questions and how long it takes us to explain everything. So let's start with step 7. So step 7 innovations, I'm just going to read the highlights actually. So continuous integration with source documents, and name variable types, feature improvement, and keep data block values. Seems to be a short list, but they've done a lot of the work on the options, so that's why it's a short list in the main software. Semantic source documents. This was introduced last version, I believe, and so basically it's a textual way to describe graphical code, and they had a way to do it before in XML, but it was clunky and not human readable. So they introduced a text language effectively for ladder and function block diagram. I know for people who like to generate code with macros, that's really awesome. But also it means that you can use source control tools like Git, and you can even use file compare tools like Beyond Compare to compare two files, because you can just create a readable text version of your code. So VCI, version control interface, by the way. So it means you can actually just put it in a Git repository and just do your source control. This way, it's the source code only, so there isn't any fluff in there that's not relevant, no meta information. It is human readable, and it's version independent, so it's going to look the same no matter what version of TIA Portal you're in, and it promises it's going to be future proof as well, so they're not going to just change it on you in the future. And you can use external tools to change track. And so that was the first step, was introduced in version 19, sorry, in version 19 or 2020, I think. And now they extended it for function block diagram and SCL. So for example, this is what later code would look like. So this is what the later code looks like, and this is what the source documents, semantic source documents version of it looks like. When you can see, it's actually quite easy to follow what's going on. As I said, it's human readable. Source code only works for, and it even works for the safety code as well now, which is pretty cool. Supports data blocks and user-defined types. Now works for libraries as well, and you can interact with it through API with TIA Portal Openness. This is what, again, a bigger version of what the latter looks like. And this is what function block diagram looks like. Again, you know, pretty easy to follow. This is all three together. So this is function block diagram. Then you go language equals FBD. This is structured text. Now you can argue, you know, structured text is already text. Why would you want to put it into semantic documents? So it's just a consistent format to, you know, to import and export code. And remember, you can have SCL rungs inside a later block, and then later, of course. So we're gonna need a big drum roll for this one. Finally, you can actually download an entire program without nuking your initial data block values. And if you have been in the you know, Siemens programming circles for a while, you will be nearly falling off your chair right now, because what happened before was every time you change the structure of a data block, it would say, oh, the data block is new now, I'm going to have to reset it to its initial values. And at certain scenarios, it was an incredible pain. And I think it was version 19 or 18 or earlier, they introduced a thing where you can actually reserve memory and say, no, for this data block, don't do it, don't reset the initial values. And it was kind of, you have to just be aware of and change it. But now it's just a download setting, right? So in this is in the download window, you can just change this thing and just say keep actual values. Yeah, hooray! it's yeah, great. I mean, I would just switch to version 21 just for that feature alone. And so yeah, I think your microphone is on, Kevin. Right. So moving on to software units. So I don't know if you use software units. If you have different people working on the same code, you can actually download, or you're working on the code and you're kind of trying to isolate things. You can download software and test software units independently, meaning you don't have to have your entire code consistent. So you can have a part of the code that you're working on and then you can encapsulate it. I can't say I've ever come across someone in New Zealand using this, but you know, if you are, do reach out to us. If it allows you to sort of you know, modular, make your program modular, and that it's encapsulated in a few different units, and they don't you know, you can work on them in independence of each other. And if you are using it, please do reach out. We'd love to hear from you what you're using it for. But there are some improvements, which means any exchange between the software units and the rest of the program had to be in enumerated data types. And when you monitored them in the watch table, they just looked like numbers instead of their names. Now you can actually monitor them as their names, their enumerated names, which is handy. and you can also interact with it via the API with TIA Portal Openness, and you also can see the comments of your enumerated data types appear when you hover over the variable. So again, this is a multi-user improvement, one forces synchronization on you, and this is that comment showing as a tooltip when you hover over the variable, the enumerated data type. That's what it looks like. And you can also do a search for block interface variables, which is again helpful for where you're looking for those enumerated data types. So let's we're going to go back to some step 7 features in general, but we're going to move to Startdrive. So Startdrive, we're okay in questions? No questions, good. So Startdrive has some interesting features there. So first one is integration of the new S220. So S220 is going to be the new servo, and if you're following the all the new drives, basically start with 2, so G220, S220, etc. There's going to be so S220 will be, I guess, the eventual replacement to the S120, although they wouldn't say that now. And there's going to be support for hardware redundant PLCs, which is great. If you've done redundant applications, and also now you can download without blocking the user interface. So we're going to talk about this feature in more detail when we come to it. But basically, it means you don't have to sit there waiting for the drive to restart, which was quite annoying if you had a lot of drives in your project. Also, you can have so something that was introduced in version 20, I believe, the drive compare function now is extended to compare 5 drives at the same time. And you can also do a mass offline firmware upgrade in your project. And finally, you can do a trace on device. So let's have a look at these features in more detail. Background download mode. Now, this is a cryptic way of describing it, but there's actually a very good feature. And if you're looking at the video now, you'll see what I mean. So before, you had to just sit there while when you click load, and you have to wait for the drive to start, restart, and you're sitting there waiting for, and the drive is going to be slower than a PLC, so you're going to have to sit there and wait for it to restart, and it takes forever. Yeah, and from version 21, you don't have to do that, so you can go on and about your business and not have to wait for it to restart. So this is going to be applicable for all drives from version 6.0 and all the drives based on the CU3, which is basically the S120 drives. So as I said, it's just a time-saving thing, and you'll see that video there. It says loading configuration, and we're going to hopefully you can see what's going on in that window. Yeah, so once it's done that, you don't have to wait. So this is a version 21. Hopefully you can see the video. Version 21. Just checking. And then you go load. And that's it. You can see, if you've watched the previous version, it's a huge difference in the time from how it was before and how it is now. So before you had to, you had to sit there and wait for it, like it's shown here, and then now you just download straight away, and it just goes away. Which again, if you have any serious number of drives in your project, this is going to be very welcome news for downloading. Redundancy support. So now you can assign so all the basically the two generation drives plus the S120 can do S2 redundancy, which means you can actually assign them to both controllers, right? So they don't have to do switchover. They're just like hot. They support the hot swap. and that's very, very good news. If you use run at PLCs, it means your fallover time will be nothing. For the older drives, you can still do the switch over when you wait for the new PLC to wake up, and then it just switches from one master to the other. And there's a video just showing you how it's done. So you can basically assign it to controllers. This is actually, interestingly, this is now even the normal, the general purpose drive G220 it supports it. Parameter compare. So it was released. Was it version 20? They started doing quick compare, drive compare, I think. Yeah, version 20. So now it supports up to 5 drives, and so you can select one reference drive, and you can compare the parameters of up to 5 drives. You can do a snapshot of the values. You can do online or offline configurations, which is great. If you only could compare like an online drive to an offline version, or 2 different projects to see what's different, which parameters are different, what's changed, good diagnostics and checking tool. And they've also introduced an update view, so in case you change something in the meantime, you can click it, it'll update the values. And then also you can export the result as a CSV file or a user-defined list, which I can't say I ever have. Mass firmware upgrade. So I know before I put your hopes up, this is an offline firmware upgrade tool. This is not an online thing. Probably a good thing. I don't know if I'd have the courage to push a firmware update on 20 drives online. But again, if you use if you remember the current way with the G1 drives, it's you can't even change the firmware version on it in the project. So being able to just select a whole lot of drives in your project and just say update this firmware, and yes, it is just offline, but it does save you a lot of time, because go right clicking on these things and go to their menu and change device, it takes some time. Then you have to wait for it to do it and then do the next one. So I mean, if you think of logistics applications, they might have hundreds of drives in one project. So this is handy. And when they do an actual firmware upgrade, then the software has to match it. Or if you're in an unfortunate position of having chosen the wrong firmware to begin with. Right. Trace on device. So that's something that I think we used to have in the past, and for a while we didn't. But now you can run the traces on the drive and then save them there and upload them later, just like we do on the PLCs. And so that's of course beneficial, because you don't have to sit there and wait for it to happen. You can just create the trigger conditions and walk away, and then come back and upload it. Again, that functionality we had on the PLCs, on the 1500s and the 1200s. And you can have up to 50 traces saved on your device, and it runs very fast, obviously, because it's running at the device's clock. Connections to PLCs. So now all drives can now be connected as technology objects to both S7 1200, the original, and G2. And what that's saying is, some drives, if you had a 1200, some drives you couldn't connect as a full drive object. You had to make it connect it via GSDML file. But now any drive is supported, even the servo ones, as a connection through a proper object to the PLC. You can now also have there's some improvements in a drive control chart. I don't know how many of you use it, but so it's a graphical way of describing motion control tasks, like position movements. And now DCC is also available for the G220 and the new S220. I mean, of course, you expect the S220 does it, but the G220 will do it as well, which is pretty cool, because it's a general purpose drive. And you can use the DCB library. Obviously supports tracing and monitoring for DCC code, and it's runs at a cycle time of 250 microseconds. So moving on to hardware innovations that I know this is a software thing, but quite often there is some hardware that releases that needs version 21 to support. So that's why they put it in the same presentation. Changes in the S7-1200 G2. If you're not aware, there is a not so new version of G2 PLC. This will become important in around this time. So I'll tell you why soon. So a big feature is OPC UA server. So in the past, only the G1 had the OPC UA server, and of course 1500s. But now with the new firmware, the G2 PLC, the G2 1200 has OPC UA server, and also it has system web pages for the integrated web server. We'll have a look at that in detail soon. With motion control, it supports pulse train outputs and some more motion control commands and blocks. Big news, it's now supported in PLC Sim Advanced, which means, so I don't know if you were this, if you had PLC Sim Advanced, not the standard one, but the advanced that you buy a separate license for, it couldn't do the 1200s, only the 1500s. And now it does the 1200 G2, which is big news, of course. NFC function that they had and blocked and now got back for the PLCs, where you can just walk up to a PLC and if you have the app, it'll tell you information about it. Was iOS only, now supported for Android. And support for central users on the user management control server, which is kind of a central user. You can set up a user basically management server on with TIA Portal. And we can do backup and restore and via the web server as well. And it supports redundant Modbus TCP, which I didn't even know existed, but there you go. I don't even know anyone using it. If you are using it, I'd love to know. And the communication load default is now 20%. I think for a while they had it at 50% for some unknown reasons, but now, well, the G2 PLCs have a dual core processor, so they probably went back to their senses and said, oh, 20% is all we need. And if you're a very convoluted programmer, they have support for 26 hierarchical levels of structures. I'd say if you're exceeding, if you got to 26, or if you're dying to get to 26 nested structures, you got bigger problems to worry about. Some new hardware. So we've got so we only had the 16 point either input or output. So now I think the official release is in January, but as you can pretty much treat it as good to go now. They have the 16 in, 16 out cards in relay and 24 volts and 24 volt sync, which is great because they're quite compact actually, and that brings us in parity with the IO digital IO density of the G1 1200. Have a battery board and a new communication processor for Ethernet. Again, that all these features are bringing us pretty much now to completion in matching the G1. So this is a kind of regurgitating some of what you already know of using the G2, that the G2 is actually much narrower than the G1. So, you know, at least you get a 22% less width, and if you're going for the 1214, you actually save up to 38%. But like I said, the 32 channel cards here, the new ones, they're really narrow compared to the old ones. So 39% less. And so will the safety cards be when they're released soon. There's also a battery board, which allows you to hold the time up to 1 year if your real-time clock is important to you. But also it will do the some long time without the battery. There is actually a battery you can put in here, and if you can see it, there's a button battery which takes the CR1032. So it's you know, you don't have to, once the battery runs out, you don't have to chuck it out and buy a new one. You just buy a battery from, you know, Bunnings. Right. So safety. Safety is a big thing in the 1200 G2. If you're not following the safety PLCs, have been available since launch, I think, but the safety cards haven't. So at the moment, you can actually run it with an 8200 SP station. You will probably be a little bit crazy, I'd say, because it's not going to be a very cost-effective solution. But now, they're saying March, I think they're going to release the safety cards. So they're going to start with the one that has 4 safety ins, 2 safety outs, and then the 2 safety in card. Oh, sorry, the 2 standard inputs. So it's one card has 4 safety inputs, which means you can run 2 dual channel, like 2 dual channel eavesdrops, for example, 2 safety outputs. That's going to be 2 dual switched outputs, so you can have effectively it's almost like 4 single channel outputs, and then 2 standard inputs. So great for little safety applications. And then in the future, I'm going to guess sort of towards the middle of the year or a bit later, there's going to be a signal board that will have just 1 safety function. So 2 safety inputs, 1 dual safety output, which is great for just when you need a little bit extra. And that's going to take it into kind of is it not just easier to do than a safety PLC territory rather than doing a safety relay if it's just something you need to tune a little bit. So exciting news now, where this is a big deal, because now, in a couple of months we would effectively match to what the first generation of the 1200s could do. So OPC UA server, like I said, now comes to the 1200 G2, supports your standard mechanisms. You can define your user, your server interface and specs like you did with the 1500s. Of course, it supports encrypted comms and diagnostics, and also I don't know what if you know Xiaomi. I can't say I was too familiar with it previously, but it's a certificate management tool from Siemens. It's a software that you download. So as far as the specs go, it's going to have it's going to allow you to have to run 2 server interfaces on the 1200 G2, and the total number of nodes, which is basically values is 2,000. You can have up to 5 subscriptions per session. So each subscription can have up to 1,000 values, but obviously the total overall is 2,000. This is pretty big news, because you imagine a 1212 is about $800 trade, and that runs a pretty sweet OPC UA server. So and it will be able to do a client as well, which they haven't fully kind of mentioned here, but it looks like it will be. So license model, it looks like they're going to continue the good faith. We'll just believe if you say you got it approach. But yeah, they're saying it's not new, but just reminding you, you might just need to buy a license. They're not exorbitant, but yeah. So for the S7 1200, it's going to continue to be the basic license, which is getting a lot of money. So yeah, moving on, the S7 1200, the new firmware, the G2, is going to get some massive improvements to the web server, and later on we'll see those improvements will carry on to the 1500s as well. So some improvements, well, accessible over the IP address of the PLC. I don't know what they mean there, because how else would you do it? So now you can see, you can do run and stop. You can start and stop the PLC from the web server. You can get more diagnostics. You can see as a program, better access to alarming and logging and maintenance. And they also have a web API, which they explain a little bit later in the presentation, which is pretty exciting if you've ever done user-defined web pages. So this is just a video showing you going through the features of the new web server. It's got a completely different look, and I don't know if you're noticing, it's actually quite snappy. The old web server was just a little bit laggy. So it's got a much more modern interface. You can see with that tree on the left, and it's just a little bit more consistent. You can see here they've got the diagnostic buffer, very easy to read. You can access recipes. And if you didn't know, you can actually store recipes on the PLC and call them in code, which is a very under-marketed feature, I feel. Alarms, you can see the alarms if you have S7 alarms and system alarms. You can access the file browser directly and just load and download files. And if you have a custom user-defined web application, you can access it through here as well. Some improvements to motion control on the 1200 G2. Now we have support for pulse train output with standard cam support, dual core absolute gearing, and some changes to kinematics, SCAR up to 3 degrees orientation, and kinematics tools and torque limiting. So it's just a further explanation on that, and the PTO is coming in February, I think. Right, and these are the new instructions as well. Superimposed move, halt superimposed, and right parameter, and then synchronous motion. Some new instructions there, and camming also, and torque limiting and torque range. Kinematics, like we said, and move within zones, specific zones, and tool move. You'll see that later on they actually have, and I will get to it, but each one of these is sort of pertains to a specific sort of industry machine, like, you know, milling and capping and so on. So torque limiting is useful for a capping machine, defined zone is useful for filling machine, etc. And now you can have motion control. Well, so these are all the additional things within the motion control instructions, and there's a graphical explanation of what they look like. And this is, like I said, there is a kind of a specific use case for all of these. And so a capping machine, like I said, is torque limiting. That helps you with capping, like molding, hot press, and torque limiting. Set tool and define tool help you with packaging machines, and then pick and place and milling. This is where you can define your zones and set your tools and so on. Right, so moving on to changes in the S7 1500s and safety. So some new security measures and protection. Increased number of runtime meters to 64. Yeah, again, one of the things you probably didn't even know existed. And now it supports IRT for iDevice. So this is having an iDevice as a synchronous real-time device, which allows you to do servo synchronization across 2 different PLCs, and one of them is acting as effectively a slave. You can now disable and enable IP forwarding in code. And if you didn't know, by the way, the S7 1500s can do IP forwarding across the 2 different interfaces. So if you wanted to access, let's say, one of your interfaces was obviously on the IO sort of subnet, and then the other one was connected to your IT network, you can still access devices on the OT subnet through IP forwarding. If you're not sure how to do that, do reach out to us. But now you can actually enable and disable that in code, not only in hardware configuration like it was before. On the OPC UA front, you can do certificate management and certificate push and runtime by a GDS, which is a Siemens kind of thing. We have a GDS server and client. The 15, all the lower PLCs have increased their OPC capability, basically. So all the way from 1510 to 1516 now have more server methods and increased number of nodes. So they have more, obviously they become more powerful and they can handle more OPC. Yeah, that's what it is. And increase the client interfaces as well. Again, with the web server, so all the PLCs, as you might have figured out now, the G2 and the 1200 and the 1500s have now got a new web server that's got a little bit more functionality, and it's nicer to look at, and it's a bit more responsive. Let's go through that in detail. So now for the memory card, you can have a mode where you can access the memory, you can protect the memory card against being uploaded directly on a PC. And you can manage that in the in the user management and rights in TIA Portal. As I said, you can have a PLC act as an well, obviously it can already act as an iDevice or a Profinet device to another PLC, but now it can be an asynchronous real-time iDevice, which means you're synchronized. You can do position synchronization, server synchronization across PLCs, which is kind of pretty cool. Runtime meters. So now you can have runtime meters, and so they used to always have them on the higher PLCs. I don't know if you've ever used runtime meters. They're actually quite cool. If you ever wanted to profile the performance of your application, so runtime meters, you can, and they use the same thing that web pages use to kind of profile the performance, and you get to see all the running time of all the of the blocks. And now it's available on all the PLCs. System web pages. So I said the web page, the web server got a birthday for a start. It shows you the actual representation of the PLC operator panel. It can show you information about your safety program. You can do run stop and firmware download is a little bit easier to see. As the motion control diagnostics. I think we'll go through each one of these in detail. So IP forwarding, I said, now you can do it in code, so you can enable it and disable it in code without having to stop the CPU. Actually, I didn't explain that in detail, but yeah, now you can see the, well, one of my favorite things, it's a small thing, but being able to see the screen on the web server, it's kind of useful. And being able to stop the CPU and it shows on all the pages, that's also useful. Right, so redundant controllers, changes in redundant controllers. Now you can change your configuration in runtime, which is great because if you have a redundant application, the chances are you don't want your application to stop. That's why you got a redundant PLC in the first place. So if you're an old timer, that was available in the 400Hs way back when, but now you can do that in the 1500R and H CPUs as well, I think. Which is great. So you don't have to stop the PLC if you were to add a new hardware station. You still need a remote I/O station. Doubt any of you were maxing out the OPC server, but if you were, good news, the S1517H can do now 100,000 100,000 OPC UA nodes, and the 1518 HF, which is the fail-safe and redundant PLC, can do 200,000, of which 60,000 are monitored cyclically. Great. Now you can do dynamic certificate management like the other 1500, so you can push a new APC certificate in runtime, meaning when the certificate validity expires, you can just push a new one without having to stop the PLC and put it in the hardware configuration. You can do firmware updates easily, and support for ring status and a better improved MRP ring status for network rings, and Startdrive support, like we said in earlier slides, with integration in hardware redundant PLCs. Same thing with improved web server access and functionality around the technology objects with IP forwarding, like we said. So the configuration and run, what does that mean? You can actually, you can't add cards to an existing station or remove cards, but what you can do is you can add an entire new I/O station. And you can also change the properties of cards and an I/O station. So this is actually pretty big because sometimes you just want to change the properties of a card, and it forces a, this is probably the most common use case, and it forces a hardware download on you, and it means you how you have to stop the PLC, and if it's a critical plant, you can't do that. So now you can do it while it's running. And what it does is it basically downloads to one PLC while the other one keeps going, and then when the new one comes alive, it takes over, and then the old one gets the other one gets the new hardware configuration. So there are some new open controllers. So an open controller is basically a software controller, but they have new ones that come along with new IPCs as well, industrial PCs. So new firmware, and so basically it's support. Main things are supporting Windows 11, IoT, and industrial OS as Linux basically. So, and you can get them with the new IPCs, but the new IPCs also are able to get a new real-time Profinet card, or a Profinet IRT, which is very good news, because it will be a very powerful PLC effectively. You can also get a graphics card for these IPCs, and that's probably an understated thing, because typically IPCs never came with dedicated GPUs, which means they were rugged, yes, but they were pretty rubbish at doing AI applications. If you had to run your model on the PC, so now they're giving you the ability to have a dedicated or up to 2 GPU cards on it, which is welcome news for applications. And this is just going in detail. I'm not going to go through everything in detail here, but yeah, there is a new open controller. That thing, it has the E200SP form factor, and then a new box PC with the improvements, like I said, and the new Profinet cards. So Symantec S7 1500V, it's a virtual PLC that runs online in the cloud. I don't think we have access to it in New Zealand just yet, but I just left the slides there just in case you have interest. Basically, you have a connector application that runs on a PC somewhere, but the actual PLC runs in the cloud. So yep, they kind of continue to develop it. If you have interest, like I said, let me know. I don't think it's available in New Zealand, Australia, but if there's some genuine interest, then we'll do something about it. The web server. So the web server, I think it's underutilized by a lot of people, is how I see it. There's actually it's a very good functionality that you get for free. And they've given it a complete overhaul in version 21 with firmware 4.1. So you can now interact with the user-defined web server through a web API with JSON, and then they're actually using that in the internal web server for the user-defined function. So in the past, you were able to create your own web page, and it's like a poor man's SCADA basically, and that you're getting for free. But you had to kind of do a special thing where you load your HTML pages and then run a thing in TIA Portal, and it creates a data block that you then have to run this SFC 99 to run. None of that anymore. You just create your application, and the PLC takes care of how it runs in the background. It's a lot more responsive, and it's a lot more modern. So that means also you don't have to do a hardware download every time you change your web page, which really sucked before, I had to say. And it can access more than the primitive data types in your user-defined web page. Much better performance due to the way it's the architecture has changed, and also the performance of the browser side has been improved. The way it's cached or allowed to be cached, I would say. And it also has a trusted client mode, which means it's a situation where it's not having to authenticate to you all the time, and that's very useful because you know, if you have it embedded in a WinCC Unified screen, then you don't want to force you to log in, so you can define it as a trusted client. And for user-defined web pages, like I said, it's now available as a JSON-based RPC web API, which means you can actually write some, like for example, Python applications that will interact with your PLC and it's much easier now. If you're in the business of doing that stuff, do reach out. This is actually quite exciting. Like we underutilize the user-defined web pages and on the 1500. It's a great feature, and it just shows the power of the PLC. Okay, how are we doing for time? Okay, we've got a few more minutes. Yeah, as far as the web server itself, again, this is a consistent overhaul across the G2 and the 1500 range. As you said, as you saw from the demo before, it's got a completely different interface. It's much snappier, and just a little bit more organized, easy access to things. You can even access files and logs easier, and it's obviously you need a new firmware to do that, and you can support trusted clients, so it doesn't have to log you in all the time. So you can display those web pages, for example, in your HMI, which means it saves you a whole lot of time trying to recreate these alarm and system alarm screens because they're just there already on the PLC. You might as well just display them as an HTML, as a web page in your HMI. So safety integrated, there's some changes in the standard. Not going to go through it in detail now, but safety IO, there are some changes. There's some new versions of the ET200SB safety cards. There is a new version of this 4 safety output, a new version of the 8 safety input, which can do now high-speed counting and overspeed monitoring. And there's a new ET200 Eco that combines safety with IO link, that is also released, and obviously there's the S7-1200 G2 cards coming up, and more development. There's some other stuff going on. So ET200 SB, a new version of the safety output card, is going to support the existing one, so it's a plug and play replacement, much lower power consumption and lower temperature. It also supports the last valid value, which is pretty good news, and it's supported from version 20. Safety input card, new version of safety input card, again compatible replacement, and it's going to have standstill monitoring, so through a safety encoder, overspeed detection, counting up and down up to 500 hertz frequency, and it's also available for use from version 20. This is a pretty interesting device. So ET200 Eco, which is the IP69 IO block. There's a new version, which I don't think anyone else does. So it's going to have, it's the one block, it's going to have 4 standard inputs or outputs, configurable, right? 4 safety inputs, 1 IO link class B, and 2 safety outputs. So if you imagine if you have a station, somewhere in a distributed like logistics application, this would be very handy because you basically get to have 2 safety functions with 4 inputs and 2 outputs and 1 IO link. So yeah, a very interesting device. Would love to know if you've what your use case would be for it. We've had some interest already in it, so glad it's finally released. So system functions, I'm going to jump through slides quite quickly because we're running out of time here and there's lots of slides, but we're pretty much at the end here. I'm going to select a few relevant topics to our market. One thing we have to cover is the migration and upgrade of TIA Portal projects. So this is kind of a big deal if you are in the business of upgrading old projects. In the past, it used to be that version 13 was the gateway. So if you had something that's older than version 13, you had to upgrade it to version 13, i.e. open it in version 13 first, and then you open it in a later version. But version 20, it seems, will be another gateway version if your project is older than version, if it's version 13 or older, right? So if your project is version 13 or older, first you have to open it in version 20, or you upgrade it to version 20, and then you can open it in version 21. I'm guessing they're doing this to try to reduce the ever-increasing footprint of the installation of TIA Portal. So they don't want to support that many legacy versions. But however, if your project is version 14 or above, then you can just go straight to version 21. Of course, licenses are still backwards compatible. So you get version 21 license, you can still run all the way to version 11 with it. If you have a Step 7 Classic project that you want to migrate, then you also have to go to version 20 first before you go to version 21. And it's not really a huge deal because you can have all these different versions installed side by side on your computer. It just takes a little bit of time to open it and migrate it. And obviously, going from 20 to 21 is not really an eventful thing. There is actually a tool now that you can download that does mass update of projects. So if you're a site and you've got a whole lot of projects you want to upgrade at the same time, this tool will take you there. You run it and it just mass upgrades projects, including hardware. Security enhancements, I think we won't cover that, except that you can sign your custom, GSD files. So interesting. And the help files, they were moved to like an HTML based thing rather than the old Windows help thing. And from version 20, it was that you can access them. You can access them online, but now you can access them online by default. You can also access them offline, but the old Windows style help file doesn't exist anymore. It's still gonna, if you want it, if you want the offline version, which you can do in settings, it will still run in the browser basically, which is fine, and TIA Portal Openness, they've kind of rehashed the model for the API there, made it a lot more modular, introduced a whole lot of functions, and it's based on .NET 4.8. We won't have time to go through all of that. Add-ins are now separated by by user add-ins and system add-ins and corporate add-ins. So, and you are allowed to delete the user add-ins, which is good. So it just separates them, and that's a nice little change as well. They changed where the directory is. We can send you all these slides later, by the way. Do let us know if you want a copy. And version control interface we covered. But yeah, as we're approaching the end of our time, I just want to cover one thing that we always have, and luckily they have extended it this year as well. So the grace period offer. So every time nowadays, we don't know when they're going to stop doing this, but I'm glad they keep doing it. So basically until the end of February. And so remember, this is us placing an order on Siemens end of February. So please don't turn up on the last day at 4 o'clock. But if you buy, what they do is normally 3 months after the release of a new version. So if you buy the software update service, if you have version 20 and you buy the software update service, then you will get version 21, even though it's already been released. Important to mention, you can only go from 20 to 21, which means if you have a version less than 20, you can't use this deal. So how it works is you just place an order, a software update service order, from anywhere from now until the end of February, and you will get a free upgrade to version 21. Then you'll also be in support for another year. And now it's considering they have been consistent with their release timeline in early December, then that actually pretty much gives you 2 versions, which is a good deal. So, and roughly speaking, an SUS is half the price of a standalone upgrade. So I would actually strongly recommend that. And because now the upgrades don't take you from any version, the SUS upgrades. So it's it's definitely worth considering. And do reach out to us. Again, it will run until the end of February, 3 months after release. So this applies to any products in TIA Portal version 20, WinCC Unified, Step 7, safety, etc. All of that. And it has to be a download one, but I don't know why you'd want to buy a USB thing. So it's just saying what products are covered in this. and that these are their new the part numbers. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Thanks for your attendance, guys. We will run more in the new year to cover the WinCC Unified changes in depth. I just felt when I looked at the slides, there's a lot going on there, and there's a few features we'd actually need to do a demo on for it to make sense. Otherwise, it's going to be a horrible death by PowerPoint, even worse than this was. And so, yeah, we will definitely let you know when we line up those WinCC Unified webinars. They might have to be more than one. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, other than that, let me know if you have any questions. Someone said the slides. Yeah, definitely. John will send you the slides, no problems. They do actually have the whole lot in them, so I think it might just take you half the Christmas break to get through it. But there's always a way with the new TIA Portal version because everything gets released together. So yeah. So I think if there are no more questions, we'll definitely wrap it up here. Thanks, guys. Great to be with you again. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Enjoy the break and stay safe. And we shall see you next year with more webinars. Thank you.